You can consider this Rock City episode 3, but unlike the past two where I've been covering usually 5 albums at a time, this time I'm only going to be covering 1. You might be wondering why I'm not just making it a traditional album review. Well, this is one that definitely fits the department and also encourages some serious debate. And it's going to require you guys checking out this artist, so this is something I highly recommend. The ambitious debut is something that every artist really looks to take advantage of. Usually a debut album sparks some potential influence and really showcases whether or not somebody has capabilities. And it's also the media's first real attempt in order to categorize somebody and try to identify, common people in which they either sound like or common places or common bands that they seem really associated with. With Gary Clark Jr., with his debut record Black and Blue, the very first name that has come off of many members of the media's lips is the name Jimi Hendrix. I'm fairly certain you guys all know who Jimi Hendrix is. Without Jimi Hendrix, a lot of the rock music of today, a lot of the way in which rock and metal has progressed ever since Jimi Hendrix's death would never have happened. Without Jimi Hendrix in the musical world itself crumbles a little bit, and many people who use Jimi Hendrix as their principal reason for picking up a guitar might have picked up, a calculator and became an accountant or some shit. So, yeah, there's a lot of importance to that name. So Gary Clark Jr., this young upstart who had just an EP to his name, who has Bonnaroo experience, now releasing Black and Blue, or actually he just did this past Tuesday. And he's getting compared to Hendrix, saying that this could be our generation's Jimi Hendrix. Is it worthy? Is it something where it is justified? Actually, kind of. I'm going to go with yes and no for this. Gary Clark Jr.'s debut is certainly a very ambitious one, and you can definitely tell the talent that he possesses off of this record, and this is something where the bar can only get raised. There's plenty of variety on this disc, which is one of the key reasons that I feel that the Hendrix comparison is a fair one. Because if you remember Jimi Hendrix's classic works, if you remember his albums, yes, there was definitely a focus on the guitar. There's definitely a focus on the solo. There is also, though, a focus on his voice. There's a focus on the composition itself. There's a focus on an overall soulfulness, a blues aspect to it, and something where his soft voice really emanates and kind of takes you away on the spiritual journey that he himself was on because of all of the drugs that he was on. Gary Clark Jr., like it or not, whenever you listen to it, you will understand has that same captivating power, only with a little bit of a new school edge. There are some songs where there feels like he has almost a Black Keys-like voice to him, where he really has that same resignation, that same real tone to him, as you heard on the Black Keys albums before, only with some fuzzed the fuck out guitars. Now, this isn't true of the entire disc, and that's where the variety aspect really comes into play, and that's something that's also very nice. Because while people like me would enjoy, 13 tracks of fuzzed out guitars and just really spacey riffs and, things that almost resemble, heavier style bluesy drone, that's definitely not something that an entire album really can make and give you the Jimi Hendrix comparison. Definitely have to have a little bit more than that. The blues aspect is certainly prevalent all throughout this record. Now, here's the one principal difference. Here's the one time that I have to say that maybe the chorus is not quite there. Maybe the Jimi Hendrix comparison was a little hasty. At times on this record, Gary Clark Jr. seems like he got a little bit distracted. Like he wanted to dive a little bit more into R&B. There's a track in here where he does have a little bit of, I don't want to call it a rap because it really isn't. It's just a quick progression of lyrics that have rhyming elements to it, but it's not done in the style of, rap or scat or anything like that. It's just basically the way in which the tone is being delivered. And the R&B side is definitely kind of nice, but it almost sounds like he's trying to be the blues rock Jimi Hendrix version of Trey Songs or something like that, which, doesn't exactly work as well, but the composition is still solid. However, whenever he's just flat out playing the blues, whenever he's flat out fuzzing the fuck out of the guitars, whenever he is delivering in a very soft register, in a very nice voice, in a voice that definitely makes you feel the pain, but at the same time also believe his story, that is whenever Gary Clark Jr. is a man who is certainly quickly rising up the pantheon, and this is only his first album, which means the best is potentially and probably definitely yet to come. We've not even seen, right now, the apex of his career. While this Black and Blue may be absolutely a fantastic debut, maybe one of the most memorable debuts of this year, it may not and probably will not necessarily be the most memorable album of his career. In fact, we may be looking back in 10 years saying that Black and Blue was kind of the outlier. The one where, well, it was alright, but it wasn't the top of the town. Gary Clark is definitely a name that should hopefully stick with us for quite some time. And hopefully a similar fate won't befall him as did befall Jimi Hendrix. All things considered, the guy definitely has a lot of talent. And he's definitely not afraid to extend these songs. Traditionally, whenever you see a newer artist, you see that there's also a little bit of a fear. There's a little bit of a fear of restricting things between maybe the 3 and 5 minute mark. Not really taking that daring leap that you saw so often in the 90s and before of extending songs, going within 6, 7, to even 9.5 minutes. Gary Clark Jr. does that. He has no fear. He's pushed past that era. He's showcasing his boldness. He's showcasing the fact that he really wants to just craft a great album, not necessarily an album that's going to sell 2 million records. However, he is going to be a guitar voice for this generation. You just wait and see. So, this is what you need to do. If you've listened to this review that I have just given you, and you're still kind of shaking your head, if you're an old school Hendrix supporter, first off, it's going to be difficult to change your mind because, let's face it, you've probably been listening to Hendrix since you were an infant. But take a listen to Gary Clark Jr. Take a listen to Black and Blue, to the whole album, not just to the song Black and Blue, because that is not a fitting representation. You need a song like Numb in order to really showcase that. And just think about it for a little while. Does this man not strike you as that same sort of potentially inspirational figure? Just listen to it. Do the comparisons seep into your brain? Does it sound just a little bit familiar, only with a new school edge? Because I think it does. I want to know what you think.